Hey YouTube, we're back with another video. Today we're going to be discussing the ins and outs of Armor and Helldivers 2. This is 2025 post-Illuminated update, and we are looking at all the armor boosters to start off. And then secondly, later in the video, we're going to be talking about the different factions, what tiers of armor I'd recommend, which perks to pair with them, and just general top picks that I usually go for when picking for the different factions. So hope you guys enjoy the video, and let's get into it. Firstly, starting off with the fortified perk. With this one, we're getting a 30% reduction in recoil. It essentially acts as if it is one less tier. So what I mean by that is when you're standing and shooting, you're essentially crouched in the game's eyes when you're wearing this armor. And then if you're crouched, you're essentially prone. And if you're prone, you get a further 30% reduction in recoil. It's quite noticeable. And it is nice for those like higher recoil weapons. You know, if you're starting to look at like the Adjudicator or the Dominator to some extent, or hell, even some of the machine guns like HMG, some people swear by it. I think the recoil reduction is quite nice, but it depends on your loadout and how much you're going to get out of that. The second part of Fortified is the explosive damage resistance, which is actually very useful in most situations in the game. Obviously, not all enemies are going to be doing explosive damage to you. Out of the bugs, it's mostly like bile related, or just teammates. A lot of the team damage you're going to be taking is going to be explosive damage. So this is one of those armors that if you are just tired of your teammates killing you with like clusters and stuff like that, Fortified can definitely help in those situations. Probably the faction that you probably will see the most benefit to is probably bots. But do bear in mind, a lot of the damage you received in this game is split up into multiple categories. Similar to how your damage is dealt with certain weapons, same as how we're taking damage. So from like a rocket against automatons, it is split up into the rocket actually impacting you. There's an impact damage, and then there's also an explosive damage. And Fortified is only going to be affecting the explosive component of those things. So if you're still getting one shot by like explosive based things like cannon turrets and stuff, that's why. There's still an impact component. But if the laser cannon turret hits right next to you, it'll reduce the damage significantly by half. So Fortified, absolutely solid perk, I think, overall. I think it fits somewhere into like the A-, B+. It kind of depends on how you're playing, and then also like what kind of weapons you're bringing alongside. Some may say that I'm like kind of overvaluing it just because, you know, many would probably like argue about like, well, why don't you just wear like the engineer kit? Because we're going to be getting into that one next. The engineer kit is, you know, fantastic for having those extra grenades. And then you're basically trading off. Do you get the extra grenades or do you get the explosive resistance, right? Because that's the difference between the two. Because the engineering kit also has the reduction in recoil, right? I find myself taking the engineering kit typically when I'm going off by myself, kind of doing more scouting, and I don't have like a resupply pack, or I'm not reliably going to be getting resupplies, right? Because it's not like you're going to be getting more from like a given like supply pack or something like that. It just has, you have a higher total amount. I think engineering kit mostly shines with the thermite because you're going from 3 to 5 rather than just 4 to 6. Just a bigger jump in percentage of like extra. It just gives you a lot more room to like, you know, maneuver and have more nades. And also if you're dying pretty frequently, you're coming back with those full nades, which is really nice. Engineering kit, I'm probably going to put right next to Fortified in most situations. It is really nice to have those extra grenades at times, but the extra defensiveness of Fortified, I don't think is something that we should be forgetting, especially when we're talking against your friends. Because I'm going to mostly be doing this from the perspective of 4-player co-op, right? In those hectic moments in tier 10 where, you know, you're dying to a lot of those explosive damage situations. If you're also someone who doesn't have democratic detonation, engineering kit will also be a lot higher because you probably don't have a grenade pistol or a crossbow or a eruptor. So keep that in mind. Medkit, I'm a big fan of Medkit. It's so broken the way I use it and how often I use it. And I think it just works in so many different loadouts, and it doesn't really matter what you bring, other than like I wouldn't pair it with someone who brings a supply backpack, right? Because it kind of counters it out. But in general, it is a fantastic all around choice, and you can't really go wrong with it other than a supply backpack. Like I said, it's amazing for just tanking damage, soaking damage. Like in bot missions, you just pop it early and make that cross to the next piece of cover, because you have that extra 2 seconds of basically just infinite health regen. It's amazing in bugs, because it can absolutely get you out of some insanely gnarly situations where just bugs are like gnawing all over you. And then for Illuminant, you know, in those situations where the voteless are all around you, or you're just taking tons of those like elevated overseer shots, you'll be able to like walk out of that. Also for chip damage situations, you know, when you take like that one swipe from a warrior, you know, and you're like maybe like 3/4 health, so you're like in one shot range of like an enemy like one shotting you in the head, but you want to stim up and be full health, and you don't have a teammate with a stim pistol. Medkit really helps in that situation. And lastly, the last thing it really helps you with is stamina regen. Now that you can start popping stims when you're 100% health, this is something they did quite a few months ago. You don't feel the burn of you like burning a stim to get your stamina back nearly as much when you use medkit armor. I really appreciate it for that, of getting me out of those situations where I need stamina and I don't want to have to like, you know, get into those forced impacts. Having those extra 2 really does pay off greatly. It also has a synergy of working with the stim pistol, if you guys didn't know, and your stims apply to them like your teammates as well, which is nice. So I absolutely think medkit is like absolutely a solid overall just an amazing pick, and it's hard not to use it with like almost every loadout in the game, because I am basing it on like how many loadouts would you bring this perk along with, and how many loadouts does it actually benefit, and it benefits literally all of them. Democracy your techs, bit of a hard one. I'm probably going to put it somewhere in like C tier. It has its moments where it's it's strong, especially if you're like winning those coin flips. It's fantastic for that. But you just got to understand that sometimes you're going to have to win multiple coin flips to survive one impact, right? So let's say you go flying because of a 500 kg, right? You've just won the first coin flip. Then you hit a wall, okay? You have to survive another coin flip. And then you might have to win another coin flip as you roll down, right? So you might have to win like 3 coin flips in order to get out of that situation, right? And you might survive the initial one, but you might not survive the next 2, which is really unfortunate. Or, you know, if there's like a devastator shooting at you, you'll survive the first bullet that was supposed to kill you, but not the latter ones after that, or similar situations, right? A warrior hits you, you survive the first hit, but the second one kills you, right? So being aware of that, like Democracy Protects obviously does help really, you know, big time with like certain stratagems, teammate stratagems, and it helps big time with like certain like large like cannon blasts, or it helps with like the hell bomb stratagem. If you're bringing the portable hell bomb, it's fantastic for those situations where the portable hell bomb goes off with it on your back and it's really cinematic. But remember, you might have to survive a tumble afterwards that might kill you afterwards. So, you know, keep that in mind. I do think it's okay, but for new people that are coming into the game that like swear by it, I would recommend like something more reliable to survive those situations. You can just pre-stim with the med kit and you will feel invincible for quite a few seconds. So keep that in mind. Servo assisted is a challenging one for me to place, because depending on how you view the benefit of throwing and how it may affect your overall game, you may put it higher or lower. There's some people that absolutely swear by servo assisted and they like always love throwing their stratagems at 75, 80 meters. And then there's other people like me where I'm just like, I can put this on, but it bothers me because my visual like muscle memory of like knowing how far a stratagem has to go is very deliberate. And I've gained that over like, you know, hundreds of hours, right? But whenever I put on servo assisted, it changes things up a lot, right? And turning it off and on, like taking it and like, you know, putting it on and off is difficult at times, right? I have a really hard time of like putting it on, using it, and then taking it off, and then like having to relearn that muscle memory again. So personally for me, I'm probably going to place it somewhere in like B tier, maybe B minus, because I do think the second component of it, of the extra limb health, is very useful, especially now that like, you know, enemies are constantly breaking our legs and our arms and those things. It is quite nice. One thing I forgot about the Democracy Protects though, is that it does have the second component of stopping chest hemorrhaging, right? So like the slow damage over time of when you have a chest wound. I just don't think it really does anything nowadays, because correct me if I'm wrong, but Vitality still, I think, stops that from even happening. So we're in a weird spot where I don't think the chest hemorrhaging actually does anything of note, other than, you know, if you didn't have Vitality and you were taking a chest hemorrhage, you would slowly, and I mean slowly, take damage over time, which is really just not noticeable. So I do think the second component doesn't really work that well, but I do like Servo Assisted's extra limb health. It is nice at giving you that extra EHP, essentially, because all your limbs are now tankier. Okay, going into Electric Conduit, I'm going to put it in like D tier. And there is a caveat where I'm going to put an asterisk, and that asterisk is there mostly for Illuminate missions, because Illuminate's enemies have the Tesla towers, and they have the Illuminate. Luna's currently trying to help me pick my my boosters on the tier list. Thank you, Luna. It does have those moments where it will help you survive a Tesla tower, or it will help you survive a harvester, which is great. But the overall arching, you know, question of the game is like, how useful is it overall? Yeah, it's great if your teammate loves to shock you constantly or use you as a jump point for your arc thrower, but it just doesn't happen that often. And I think you are better off just like either taking like the all-arounders, like Acclimated, or just taking some other kind of more beneficial like perk. So yeah. Electrical Conduit should probably have a secondary perk that does something to either enhance arc-based weapons or just something more general, like less impact damage or something like that. It needs a second component for me to value it as much as the other ones that have a proper second component, right? It would go up if it did. Peak Physique, bit of a challenging one, just because with certain weapons, it's fantastic and you really love to use it. And with certain builds, it makes no difference if you had it on or off, right? If you bring a fast handling AR and you have a support weapon that doesn't really have bad handling, it's a tough sell for me. But if you bring like HMG and Dominator, it feels amazing, right? You get so much value out of the perk. If you bring a melee build, it has so much value in the perk. It makes melee weapons insane. Like it really does. It really enhances them. So if you're someone who likes either one of those, I think you're going to probably value it probably even more than me. But as far as like the grand scheme of the game, I think there's a lot of builds and a lot of weapons that don't really benefit from Peak Physique. It's like almost on that S tier. If more weapons had poor handling in the game, I would probably put it in S tier. There aren't that many weapons with poor handling overall, or there's some weapons that you don't really care about the handling being sort of bad, like recoils, for instance. It doesn't really bother me that the handling is like not that good, so I don't typically bring it with Peak Physique. But like MG43, even Stalwart sometimes, or HMG, like those weapons feel night and day different, you know, if you bring Peak Physique, right? Dominator feels way better if you bring Peak Physique. So, you know, keep that in mind when we're talking about this. Inflammable is probably going to go up to C tier. It should probably be a little bit closer to Electric Conduit. I just find it pairs better with a lot of builds. And it is a bit more niche, but I also think that it depends on what armor tier. If you wear light armor with Inflammable, you sometimes don't even notice that you have Inflammable perk on. But if you wear heavy armor with Inflammable, it makes a world of difference as far as like how consistent and how good the perk feels, right? You know, there's an asterisk for, you know, the DE sickle, right? Inflammable really enhances that weapon. It's just one weapon. It enhances the torture and flamethrower. That's true. But there are times where I just prefer to bring like heavy medic or medium medic and just have the extra stims. So if I get set on fire, I just have those extra ones. Or I'll just bring a supply backpack, right? And then I'll just stim through the fire, right? Constantly going prone afterwards. So Flammable's in a bit of a weird spot where, once again, I do wish there was a secondary component or just a higher damage resistance. 75% is kind of low. It doesn't always feel noticeable unless you're wearing the heavy armor, which armor rating plus the perk stack. So keep that in mind. Advanced filtration. Once again, very similar to Inflammable. It does work quite well with gas builds. If you guys don't know, if you wear like heavy armor gas resistance and you have vitality, you can actually just sit there in the gas field taking no damage while all the enemies around you are like trying to hit you and dying or getting like gassed themselves, right? So very strong in that regard, in that build, but outside of that, you're not really going to get that much usage unless your teammates are just like dropping gas on you or you someone who constantly brings gas grenades. But even then, I don't think gas damage is that much. You get into the gas field, just pop a stim, you know, you're just going to be fine. You know, just walk out of it. Doesn't last nearly that long. Maybe if an enemy started to do gas related damage to us, you know, that would be something that I start to value more. But you know, even with like electric conduit, like on a limited missions, it's maybe a B tier pick for limited missions, whereas like advanced filtration and inflammable don't really change. It's mostly just dependent on what build you bring. Unflinching, definitely a disappointing one because they don't have a heavy version of it. If you guys don't know, unflinching basically just stops your reticle from moving, your aim point, your aim down sight. It won't move when you get shot, right? Basically think of an unflinching perk from like Call of Duty or something like that. Now, some people are like, it should also prevent stagger, because some people say it doesn't even work because when you get shot, you still stagger backwards, right? So that may unsettle your aim a little bit, but for the most part, it does work. It just doesn't work as much as some people think it does or should do. And then also we don't have a heavy variant of it, which is probably the version that most people would use it with. If we had a heavy variant, I'd probably put it A tier because it's actually going to be quite nice against illuminant enemies shooting at you, but also bots, specifically bots, because it's really nice when you have unflinching and you're using it with like the AMR, for instance. No flinch. It's great. It's really nice to be able to shoot through that flinch when you're getting shot at from like a heavy devastator, because I'm sure we've all been in those situations where a heavy devastator is shooting at you and you just can't get your shot on target because they keep flinching you every time you shoot them or they shoot you. It's very annoying. But I think for the most part, I think it deserves somewhere to be in B minus, C plus. I might be being a bit too kind to it, being in B minus, but I do think like with quite a few weapons and even primary weapons, it does feel a lot better on bot missions. And I'm mostly going to be putting it there for bot missions. It doesn't help all that much on bugs, but I have heard the argument of like, it is nice when a bug comes up to you and hits you, your weapon doesn't stagger super hard. So all of a sudden you like shoot the rock next to you and die with your crossbow. There is that. I can absolutely see those moments where like someone really appreciates it. And it also has really good drip. Side note, sidebar, the drip of unflinching armor is really good. So I'm also going to put that. I'm going to give it a little bit of a bump. Okay. Siege Ready, no surprise, absolute S tier. They already have said that you're not going to be fixing the unintended behavior of it. If you guys don't know, currently it gives ammo not just for your primary, but also gives it for your secondary and support weapon, as long as you don't have a backpack that stores the ammo for it. So it doesn't work with the autocannon, but does work for something like the AMR. And then the secondary component is increases the reload of your primary weapons. There's people out there that say that it affects your support weapons and secondary weapons. That's placebo. It doesn't actually. We've done like slowdown footage of it. Does not affect them. But, you know, if you guys have evidence that it does, you know, feel free to link it. But, yeah, it should only be your primary weapon. From all the weapons I've seen tested, it only affects primary weapons. But regardless, really strong for primary weapons, especially like crossbow, getting that extra ammo and reload speed. Because let's be honest, 50% of the time you're using the crossbow, it feels like you're reloading. So getting that 30% faster reload speed is really nice. Highly recommend. Or I guess it's 20%. Yeah, really nice. Highly recommend. Accumulated or acclimated, sorry. B plus, B tier. The reason why this kind of comes above the other ones is just because of how well-rounded it is, and you get the added benefit of acid-resistant armor, which does affect bug-related attacks, right? So like the acid spew of the new of the new hunters, Bile variant enemies in general, Bile Titan, those kind of things are, you know, actually benefiting from Acclimated. One little side note, Fortified does help with Bile Titans. Bile Titans attacks count as like kind of an explosive. For a long time, it said whenever you died to a Bile Titan, explosive. You died to an explosive. So Fortified actually does, you know, do quite a lot against a Bile Titan if it is spitting at you. So top tip on that one. So yeah, Acclimated, strong for like anti-fire builds because it does give you a decent amount of fire resistance. Not amazing, but it does something. It can help you versus the versus like the Tesla towers and stuff like that. Just make sure it doesn't headshot you. You will die in one shot still to the Tesla towers in aluminum missions if it headshots you. So careful. And then also the acid and then gas. If you're bringing any gas grenades, it does help. You know, solid all-arounder. I do wish it had a secondary perk like a lot of the damage resistance ones. But, you know, that being said, I do think the all-around nature of it, you know, propels it a little bit higher than the other ones. And a little less niche. Because you can bring it with all the builds that I said, you know, worked for those. You can bring it with that one. All right, we have the integrated explosives. This is the new perk from the War Bond, where it's basically after a short delay, I think it's 1.5 seconds, it causes an explosion. The explosion is quite nice. It can close bug holes, it can kill a charger, it can kill quite a few small bugs, but it's essentially the radius of like a grenade, so it's not like this massive explosion. Yeah, it's more of like a meme pick. I think it's like closer to like a D tier. If it had a secondary perk of something else, you know, maybe it had like a reduced amount of explosive damage, or like it had some kind of like subdued version of Democracy Protects, just some kind of secondary component to it, I feel like I would value it more because, you know, I feel like it's more just a fun perk, right? It's just funny when you die and you can take out some enemies with you, or you have like a teammate that like kills you and then they die with you for a funny moment. But as far as like usefulness comes out, like I feel like it's not always going to be there. You're probably only going to be using this 4-player co-op, and you're probably better off using something else. But as far as like a fun perk goes, I think it's very funny and it like fits the theme of the War Bond. It's just, it needs something else as part of it. If it had something else, I think it would have been a better sell for me. But yeah. Scout armor. I want to put this in S tier, but as far as 4-player co-op goes, I'm probably going to put it in A tier. This is a very strong pick for that solo player in your co-op mission. Or if you're someone who just like plays a little bit away from your team, 30% reduction in detection radius is more noticeable than you think it is. If you play solo, you already know this is S tier. I don't think I need to tell you. I'm just going to say it again. This is a 4-player co-op tier list. But for like team play, it's actually quite nice because it has a secondary component where if you ping, it does a little radar ping every 2 seconds. So you can find POIs, you can find enemies at a distance. It's just really nice for being able to scout out a map in advance. You kind of just like spam your ping around. And then while you're doing that, way less patrols are noticing you. So for like tier 10, like a lot of the enemies you're going to be running into are because of a patrol noticing you. And if you could just reduce those patrols' awareness to you, it's very useful. So for people that are like light armor enjoyers, you already know this is like a really good perk for you. And you could just like be that little more of that Metal Gear Solid playstyle. Very solid perk, but yeah. Extra padding is something that I wish had more. I'm going to put it somewhere in like B-. Some people are not going to like that placement. I know they're already saying, but I love my light gunner and I get it. I just find myself personally a lot of times recommending either go to medium and get the better perk or stay light and have a better perk, because extra padding for the most part only allows you to survive like one extra melee attack from a bug. Sometimes no extra melee attack if they're headshots from like a Brood Commander, for instance. It's the same. And then it doesn't affect headshot resistance, because if you guys don't know, you need 101 armor rating and greater to get extra headshot resistance. So it's just out of the band for that too. And yes, you keep the light movement speed, which is fantastic, but I would argue like if I were my light medic, I'm tankier than someone who brings extra padding, because I just have 2 extra stims in my back pocket will allow me to survive longer. But also when I do stim, I have 2 extra seconds of essentially invulnerability, right? Or I'll bring Siege Ready, where I just have that many more shots of ammunition. Because typically when I'm dying in bug missions, it's either because I'm overwhelmed, I could just stim, or I'm running out of ammo and I have nothing to kill that Siege Ready, right? Peak Physique has more of that build, and it like really helps with melee. Scout is fantastic for just ignoring combat in general and keeps you really tanky. And like, honestly, engineering for the extra nades are really strong. Fortified for just general tankiness and just like, you know, better recoil reduction, so you can like stand more often and shoot. There's a lot of these perks in the B tier that I think I would just rather pick rather than staying one higher level on mobility. Now, you know, is it like closer to like B plus or so? Yeah, probably. Extra padding does make a lot of sense when you're going to an area where you literally can't get to that armor tier. So like for the fortified commando, like the Michelin Man one, I do think that one with extra padding does actually make a lot of sense, because you're going all the way up to 200%. You're getting huge amounts of damage reduction. But I still feel like extra padding should have some kind of secondary component to it. And I've heard some feedback on it, and I've come up with a secondary one where it's like it reduces the amount of impact damage you receive, specifically impact damage of terrain. I would love this to be like, and it kind of fits thematically, where if you take some explosive damage, you hit terrain, you know, those situations where like, you know, you hit something, what is it? The rocket striders, they blow up, and then it causes you to hit like the wall or something like that, and then you die. Extra padding would like reduce it by like 25% or something like that. If it worked like that, like ragdoll damage, kind of, I don't know how you would describe it. I think all of a sudden like extra padding would go to like A tier, right? Because there's definitely a lot of situations where explosive goes off, you might survive it, but then you die to the impact, which sucks. So I think I'm pretty happy where everything is laid here. Just keep in mind for this tier list, you know, it's personal preference, right? And it's how I play, and it fits my play style, right? I'm typically more aggressive, and I more or less want something that's well-rounded, or fits really well with a build, right? So something that, you know, has less value in it and maybe is more niche and particular, I'm not going to value as much. But also, your playstyle may benefit and put it in your S tier, right? Easily could see that, right? Someone may really love servo assisted because they can throw the 380, 70, 80 meters into an automaton base and get the hell out of there, right? Versus me, I don't mind walking the extra 20 meters to throw it, then run back, right? Doesn't bother me. So keep that in mind. All right. Now, this is the portion of the video where I want to talk about light armor, medium armor, heavy armor, and then top picks I have for each available faction. So starting off with bugs, I typically recommend people take light or medium armor. I just feel as if heavy armor, although will allow you to take that 1 or 2 extra hits from like a hive guard or something like that, often you're just too slow and you're just going to take exponentially more hits because you're so slow, right? You can't outrun your enemies. You can't outposition them. You're just constantly out of stamina. The extra tankiness does not end up helping you in the long run. Medium armor can largely be said as well because you're losing some mobility, but I think the extra hit, being able to survive that so you don't get like 1-2 punched by a hive guardian or a warrior is nice, right? But for the most part, I'm usually taking light armor, and my top picks for that will obviously be Scout, as we talked about earlier. It'll be light medic. If you guys are wondering where you can get this, it is in the superstore. Engineering is always nice for those situations where you have a high recoil weapon, but also you have like thermites or just like need more nades in general. Like gas grenades are insane right now, as I've been talking about, having those +2 on every death, or just in general. So you can like throw out 6 individual gas grenades. You can basically keep a bug breach gassed the entire time it's out, right? It's insanely good in that regard. One of our only fortified armors for bugs, if you just feel like you're dying to your teammates a lot or just spewer damage in general, like bottle damage, decent pickup. Obviously, for the extra padded people out there, another one that you can grab in the superstore. And then one of my favorites, or 2 favorites, is the Predator Peak Physique armor. This is something that I'm going to bring with my machine guns, or if I'm bringing a melee build, I'm either going to bring the light armor or the heavy armor for my melee build. It's one of the few times I actually wear heavy. And then you have Street Scout for like my general, like I'm using this when I'm using crossbow a lot of the time, just so you have that 30% reload speed and 20% more ammo. It's really nice. All right. As far as medium armor goes, you know, Bone Snapper, one of the first armors you get in the game, is like just a solid pick for so much of the game versus bugs. You know, you are going to be a little bit slower, but just so good for so much of the game. Another one that is like kind of an interesting one is the Enforcer. It's not quite heavy, it's not quite light, but you get the bonus armor rating, right? So it meets that 101 or greater threshold, so you get more headshot resistance. So this will reduce a lot of deaths to the Brood Commander just smacking you in the head because he's taller than you. But I will use this more on bot missions, and I'll talk about that more later. But yeah, like if I'm bringing like a flamethrower build, a lot of times I may grab something like this, especially if I'm pairing gas with it, because you're getting the fire, acid, and gas as part of it. And if a teammate's got a shock weapon, it's nice for that as well. And then if I'm bringing a flamethrower, it's obviously going to be a inflammable medium or heavy. Another one of those situations where depending on the build, I will probably go for a heavier tier, especially with heavy flame. Heavy flame resistance does feel absolutely amazing when you're using the DE sickle, and then heavy gas feels absolutely amazing when you're using a lot of gas grenades and gas stratagems. This thing's going to be absolutely like, this armor is going to be so good when we get gas mines. Like, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be disgusting. All right, now going to bots. I'm typically recommending medium to heavy armor. It's not to say that you can't make light armor work in a bots mission, but I feel like you need to have a particular play style that many players will probably not have when they're playing bots, either due to people getting bored of playing super slow, or just in general not finding stealth to be their cup of tea, or just like they're getting noticed by enemies, right? When you play light armor, you definitely have to play more like in the back. You have to find cover more often and make sure you're staying behind cover. And you have to be very careful of certain mechanics like laser cannon turrets, or, you know, the bunker turrets, or like rockets from rocket striders that will just outright one-shot you, or even heavy devastators that will just kill you so fast you won't have time to get behind cover and stuff like that. So once again, I'm not saying that you can't use light armor, but I would recommend at least going for like a medium set. And this is where one of the few times I'll be like, okay, well, you have medium extra padded, starts to make more sense. If you want that like medium armor for peak physique, I would say at a minimum for bots, I typically bring the medium armor, but a lot of the times I'm going all the way down for bots to like Twig Snapper if I'm going for peak physique. If I want my siege ready, I have the cinder block. This is in the store right now for those wondering. But I think the one that I use probably the most is the Butcher. This gives me the best success chance when I'm going against bots, mostly down to the fact just like you're in the heavy armor tier, so you're not going to get one shot nearly as much, but that extra stim really helps with those moments where you're just like taking a stupid amount of damage and you need to get from one point to another, and there's going to be a ton of fire. Being able to pre-stim and have those 2 extra seconds, but also if you have chip damage, you don't have to worry as much about, you know, using that extra stim to make sure that you're like able to get to the next stim resupply, for instance, right? One other honorable mention is the medium scout armor. A lot of people tend to forget about this one, especially for bots, because they'll typically just go for the light scout, but going and upgrading to the medium scout will make a difference with your general survivability, and I highly recommend checking it out. You probably have this one because it's in the main war bond, right? A lot of people just tend to forget about this one. All right. That being said, I will take the Fortified Commando from time to time if I just feel like I'm dying from a wide range of things that day. The general damage resistance of 200 armor rating is very noticeable and does help quite a bit, especially with headshot resistance included. But you are incredibly slow because you're in heavy armor in general, right? So, and you're lacking that extra perk, which you could have picked up from like explosive damage resistance, which if you feel like you're mostly dying to like rocket devastator shots or, you know, rocket strider shots and stuff like that, you may appreciate the extra explosive resistance more so than the generalized extra, I think it's like 15-20% damage resistance that extra padded gives you over the normal 150 rating. Okay. But yeah, mostly for boss missions, I love to bring my heavy. If I'm going a little bit faster, I'll take medium. And if I'm feeling like I just need to blitz through a mission, that's when I'll start taking light. So for Illuminate, you can 100% get away with light armor, but I'm sure we've all encountered those situations where either like you were touched by a harvester laser for 0.1 of a second, you fell over, or you've been in a situation where an elevated overseer was like standing over you and just like all 3 shots of the burst hit your head, you fall over. That's where going to the extra damage resistance of, you know, medium and even like Enforcer really makes a big difference, especially Enforcer for the headshot resistance. Typically in the Illuminate cities, I don't need the Street Scout as much because there's so many like ammo resupplies everywhere. That's where like I might take Trench Paramedic if I feel like I need the extra stims. But a lot of times with Illuminate, you can actually just avoid so much combat by just running the Scout armor. The extra nades is always nice for like horde clearing and like the extra like gas nades and stuff like that. You know, Predator, I love, and I've recommended a lot of people to take the MG43. The MG43 goes from feeling a pretty sluggish machine gun to actually feeling like a primary weapon when you put on the Peak Physique armor. So another one of those situations where Predator armor on Peak Physique is great. I probably wouldn't go to heavy armor too often unless I'm doing like the defense missions on Illuminate. Medium is probably where I'd stop for Illuminate. Just I feel like I'm running around so much. And the voteless, although they're not super like threatening, if they do surround you and they're constantly pushing you back, it means you have less time to shoot at the actual enemies that are more threatening. So having that greater level of mobility and not going to heavy does make a difference in my opinion. So let's see if there's anything else I would recommend, but I think we've mostly talked about it. Remember, Combat Technician, I'm going to mention again. A lot of people forget about it. And versus Illuminate, you know, there's going to be those moments where like grabbing the arc resistance is fairly useful, right? If you are dying constantly to the Tesla towers, having the Prototype 16 armor is quite nice. it will save you. And if you are like somehow constantly getting in range of the arc blast from the harvester, this will save your life a lot. All right. And that's my video on armor and how I look at it and what I'd recommend. Obviously, like I've said before, this is like my personal preference and just what I kind of recommend people as they're getting into the game. You know, depending on your playstyle, you may have a very different look out on like, you know, what kind of armor plays best for you, what kind of perks play best for you. Use this as kind of like a guide to figuring out what might fit into your playstyle, right? And that being said, if you guys have enjoyed the video, consider dropping a like on it, consider a comment down below, and come by the stream, you know, and you can see the armor in practice. And I'll try and show you the benefits of the different armor while you're there, or you can ask questions. I've been live every day other than Mondays, 3 a.m. EST to about noon EST. I'm also now streaming on YouTube, which many of you may have noticed. So if you don't like going over to Twitch, you can check me out on YouTube. And yeah, thank you so much for watching, everybody. And I'll catch you guys for the next video. All right, everybody. Peace.